And his question is, he's going on holiday, perhaps he's already gone on holiday, and the perimeter has not got a fence all the way around. So we talked through the various spaces. One space was a space of, so I said to him, if it's a space of up to 5 meters, 10 amas, so then you can call it a Pesach. Okay, so those were dealt with. Although actually that's not always the case, because if it's at the corner, then if it's at the corner, there's a rule in halacha that you don't have a Pesach at the corner. So if the space was at the corner, it's a bit of a problem. We're not going to deal with that now. There was a space of 6 meters between him and the neighbor. Obviously, somewhere in Scandinavia, it's a Goyish neighbor. I asked, does the neighbor have a fence around the rest of his property? And he says, yes. So he says, if that's the case, there's no problem. Again, if you have in your back garden, let's say, a gap of more than 10 amas, so then if your neighbor is a Yid, so it's as if you're totally exposed, and either you make an Eruv or you can't carry in your garden. That's because your neighbor is a Yid. But if it's a Goy, with a 1 Yid and 1 Goy, you don't need to have an Eruv. Or even several Goyim, 1 Yid with if it's 2 Yidden with a Goy, you need to have an Eruv. But 1 Yid with 1 Goy does not need an Eruv. So the gap between him, his property, and which is renting, and the Goy next door, which is, even though it's more than 10 amas, so long as the Goy's fence is all the way in the rest of the perimeter of his property, I said that would be okay. But then he has another problem, that the driveway or whatever, there's a gap of 11 meters. So how do you deal with that? So of course there's one option of putting up poles and wires and making a Tzura Pesach across 11 meters. That's one way. I asked him, tell me, can you park your car in the middle of that 11-meter gap? So after he thought, yes, he can park his car in the middle. Okay, then that would take the gap, instead of being an 11-meter gap, you'll have less than 5 meters on either side of the car. So now you've reduced it from one large gap of 11 meters of however many amas there is to 2 smaller gaps. And then I asked him, hang on a second, what car do you drive? Because if you have one of these 4-wheel drives or whatever, that they are quite tall off the ground, so the gap onto the car is more than 3 shvochim. Well, then that doesn't serve as a wall. Yeah, so if it's a truck or something, not every car serves as a wall, because some cars are quite high off the ground. So he actually reassured me that his car is a low slung vehicle with I told him 24 centimeters, which seems to be that was his car is like that, and then he could do that. If it was a higher vehicle, let's say a Range Rover, if it was a higher vehicle, it could still say the same thing, but I would tell you to put some boxes under the car to block up that it shouldn't be that gap of 3 tefachim height all the way through, and that would also serve to diminish the gap. I'm advised to remove the boxes after Shabbos before you drive off. Okay. Let's go on. Here's a question which came actually just yesterday, and it's a bit of a complicated one. Before I go on to this complicated one, I want to say like this, which I didn't have a chance to look up in the last 24 hours. I just put it on the notes. When we talk about a gate being a mechitza has to be 10 tefachim high. Many car parks will have a bar. It may sometimes be like a triangle, a long triangle, which is a barrier for a car, but it doesn't qualify as a wall. So if, let's say, you had a gap of more than 10 amas, and there was only a barrier or 2 barriers, which are just bars, triangles, that would not count as a mechitza, to my understanding, and you'd have a problem. On the other side, again, if it's Negela Maisa, please come back again. But as far as I remember, a gate, which is a kosher gate, in other words, it's more than 10 tefachim high, it doesn't have a gap underneath of 3 tefachim, and doesn't have gaps of more than 3 tefachim within the gate. When the gate is open, it's still a valid mechitza. So you follow. You might have a very wide driveway, more than 10 amas, and you've got proper gates. When those gates are open, as far as I remember, they still serve as a mechitza, and it remains a Rosh Hashanah even as the gates are open. But I didn't look at it just now, so I'd like to leave that as a question. Let's go on to another question. Here I got a question from someone in California, a fine Talmud Chacham, who's written a couple of Sforim, and he asked me, what's the position about the Union Jack? Are you allowed to possess it, etc.? The question is that the Union Jack is made of three crosses, three tzlomim. I don't remember the details. Yeah, the one is the George cross and this cross and that one, and they are all became into one combination, and that's the flag of our country, Medina Shel Chesed and Azevita. But we have this question he's asking, and it's okay. He's asking from California. He's allowed to ask the question, and so I did look around and didn't find too much. I did find a sefer written in Switzerland who talks about the Swiss flag, which is the Red Cross, obviously. And so one question is, do Christians actually worship the cross? Or is it a religiously associated symbol, but it's not an object do they worship? They don't. As far as I understand, it reminds them of Oiso and etc., but not that they actually worship the cross itself. So we have a Mishnah talks about yes,
but lots of them do it on themselves when they go to certain places. You see these footballers when they score a goal, they make the.
There's no question that it is a religious practice, and when the guys say I'll cross my fingers. So they are invoking the Tzelem, and when they say touch wood, they are invoking the cross, which Yosha was hanged on the cross. They
do it on themselves, on they make the cross on their body.
Yeah. I actually, in my looking around for this, I saw that when we do shaking the lulav, so Hamidic Chabad is we stand in one spot and we go to the corners, to the right corner, to the left corner, and then we go straight, and then we go to the corner at the back. Some Ashkenazim, actually, they turn facing to the right. Well, obviously, when they turn right, they're not facing the right. And then they turn to they face south directly, face north directly, face east, and then they turn around to face so some of the poskim raise the question that in effect they are kind of depicting a cross. By doing the four directions, they are making their motions, they're making the motions of a cross. Others say that because in between you also go up and down, that takes away the problem. I want to also mention an interesting thing. There's a note of the Rebbe about a compass. Now, when you draw a map, typically you have on a map, you're going to have an indication for the four directions. Usually that's a cross. And the Rebbe made a correction on, I don't remember on what material it was. Don't make a cross. Instead, make a circle. And from the circle, you'll have four arrows going out of the circle, but they're not the bottom end of the arrows are not touching. So you avoided making a cross. So there is this, even though obviously no one thinks that a compass is got anything to do with worship. But you know, very, very careful about this. I want to share with you another thing, which that when you use fonts, and nowadays you've got a choice of fonts on your computer, there are different letters T. Sometimes the letter T, it looks mamish like a cross. There are other fonts which are where the bottom is curved, which takes away that problem, and it's obviously preferably to use one of those. You know, you've got these six panel doors, sorry. Very, very popular. You've got 6 panels on the door, 2 lower ones. Oh, right in front of you on the way. I didn't even plan this, by the way. This is the Shal of Mezuzah, but look what you have in front of you. This is a 6-panel door. I heard that in the some parts of America, this was called the Bible and Cross. design. Imagine that the bottom part is like two open pages of a book. The upper part has a tzir of a tzelem. And I was quite worried about this. Yet, I saw recently a video of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe's room upstairs in 770. I saw a video, I went through all around the room, and there are at least 3 such doors with this design. And so I felt reassured that if it didn't disturb the Rebbe, I can relax. And it's a panel, so yeah. What their kavanah is, I want to show you another thing. Someone in my family, extended family, they bought a child swing. One of these you wind up or something with a battery, whatever, keeps the child swinging. Whenever they put the baby in, crying. The baby out, quiet. And it was like weird. What's this swing? Why is it getting this child so upset? And father took a screwdriver and took it apart, and you saw inside the top of the swing, like where the mechanism is, there was some little script there, some Christian script there. I took it out, and the problem was solved. It's so interesting that it doesn't make any sense. Why did that guy in the factory think that there's going to be a tayeles of putting in such a, the how do you say, the sitra achra of a mezuzah inside a baby thing? But there's a meshugas in the sitra achra also. I also in my research saw that the Belzerov, I'm talking about Lecher of Aaron, so he had a minig of benching matbeas. Similar we saw by the Rebbe, he would give out matbeas and later would be giving out dollars. He had a minig, but he would not give a bracha on a Swiss coin, a Swiss franc. He would not give a bracha on a Swiss franc because the Swiss coin has got the cross on one side, and he refused to give a bracha on the Shasi V'Yada. Now, coming back to the halacha.
Doesn't intention come into it?
Of course.
I mean, with this door, they don't intend it to be a cross.
Yeah, all right, I argue that by the Rebbe in the Mitzvah, with the Frierdiker Rebbe is there, so I can relax on that. But when you say why does the Swiss flag have a cross, it's because it's a Christian country. I don't have any doubt about that. And the reason why we have in the Union Jack has crosses is because it's this cross and that cross. You check it up, you'll see it. It's got to do with crosses. It's got to do with
as far as the Union flag is concerned, surely it's only the English flag that's actually a cross. The others are actually diagonal. The saltires, the cross of St Andrew and St Patrick are actually corner to corner. They're not actual Salems.
I'm not convinced. They call it a cross, and I saw as again I'm researching. Yeah, I saw a thing that when you have 2 people giving Shalom Aleichem, a cross, and there's another 2 people also giving Shalom Aleichem, they shouldn't give Shalom Aleichem diagonally over the other one's hands, because by this they're creating a cross. So some people have this sensitivity. Some of us remember Yankel Schreiber, all of us Shalom. Yankel Schreiber used to come out with these tetelach, these notices. He found crosses all over.
In your brickwork, you remember? In the brickwork.
It was amazing. At any rate, there is a sensitivity, and coming back with the Union Jack, it is a cross. The question is it used?
It's the Union flag, not the Union Jack, unless it's on a ship.
So now, I would definitely say that generally it's not used for worship. And even if someone stands and salutes to the flag or swears by the flag, they don't mean a religious allegiance. It's a national allegiance. I think that would be true. Is it so? So there is room to be makel on it. To have it in a shul, I'm going to leave that out for the moment. Okay, I want to share you another cute anecdote. This fellow is writing. There's a town in Hungary, and the official name is Deutschkreuz, which means German cross. Yidden called it Salem, And he tells how he came to the train station in Sopron to buy a train ticket to go. And he asked by the ticket, the guy by the ticket office, can you give me a billet for Deutschkrauts? And the fellow smiles, he says, Jews call it Salem. And if you'd send a letter to that city, you'd write on it Salem, they knew exactly where to deliver it. So the Yidden called it Salem, and I've got the Salem Arov. That was the Yiddish name for the same town. So the Yidden avoided calling it with its name because they didn't want to mention the cross, etc. Okay, so uncomfortable about it, but there is Mokim Lahokel to say it's a national symbol and people don't see it as an object of worship. Let's move on. So now we have here, this is an interior door, and it's a door of a bedroom, and you can see we're standing, the picture is taken from the corridor. Now from this, where you see those hinges, you understand that that door swings out into the corridor, not into the room, as would be the case of most domestic doors. In public buildings, most room doors actually are made to swing out, and that's for fire regulations, that in the case of fire, that we would be able to get out without delay, without concern of the several people in the room. But in most private houses, it's normal for the doors to swing in. Here the door swings out. And the question here was, where do we put the mezuzah? So here we have, there's a term in Gemara, and the story in the Gemara was that you have Gemara Menachos, which talks about the dinim of mezuzah. You have two houses. You have one house is the man's house, and the other house is the woman's house. But the man is hungry, so he built a door between his house and his wife's house, so he should be able to get supper. So now the question is, where do you put the mezuzah? From her house to his house, or from his house to her house? That's the Gemara's question, and the Gemara says we will decide that question by where the hinges are. What that means, now people very often get this confused about this. It doesn't matter which side, whether to the left or the right, but the hinges will dictate what is the interior and what's the exterior. And next, let me explain. We have at the Pasuk, Al mezuzah is beisecha. The mezuzah should be on your house, but beisecha is also understood as, by Chazal, bi osecha, the way you come. So the mezuzah is on the right as you enter. And here the question is, which way is the right? So the Gemara says that when you push the door and the door swings into a room, that's called the interior, and Heker Tzir, that will dictate. And so here in this case, we have this door opening from the room out into the corridor. So according to that, according to Min Chabad, we would say that the corridor is the interior and the bedroom is the exterior, and the mezuzah, as you'd come into the room, would be on your left. I asked him if this room has windows, and he confirmed that it does have windows, and therefore there is although an unlikely balance here, but there is a possibility of coming through the windows and then coming through the door, and that's what we have in the Soira, going back to the Rebbe Marash, and perhaps even earlier, that we would follow the criterion of Heker Tzir, even though it goes to a degree against the other logical ways of analyzing the position. It's not the direction of normal travel, and you still follow Heker Tzir. When there's no window to the room, so here there's a difference between Chabad Rabbonim and the way I was Makabel and the way I would Paskin, is that if there's no window and the door opens out, then you would put the mezuzah on the right as you enter, and that's typical, let's say in a basement or in a where it's an air raid shelter. It's quite common that they have the doors opening out, and there's no windows where a person could come through. And so really air raid shelters in Eretz Yisrael are usually outside the building in any case. But if it were, let's say, inside the house, or let's say a fridge, and the question whether a fridge needs to have a mezuzah, because it's not really comfortable to stay in a fridge for long term. If you want to have a long arichas yom b'yashan teves b'almadein, if you want to be a cool guy.
So this has a bearing on the question last week about the sliding door.
Yeah.
About whether there's another door into the garden.
Yeah, but the garden you can come over the fence, so that's not such an issue. All right, so that's a general hachra that we follow. According to Chabad, we'll go to Heketzir, which actually it's important. It comes up in conversation with other people. Why does Chabad do this? And what about derech bioscha, iker, betofel? The answer is that in the Gemara it doesn't talk about derech. It doesn't talk about direction of travel. It doesn't talk about iker betofel. The only criterion written in Gemara is Heketzir, and therefore that's by us, it's the highest criterion. When there is no Heketzir because there's no door at all, or both doors slide equally, then we're going to follow Iker and Tofel, etc., which is another discussion.